Hello again, and welcome to One Starfish, which our mission is to help change the world one person and one life at a time. I'm really excited. This is a really good friend of mine, Renata. She's amazing. She's an intuition and nutrition coach. If you follow her, and I hope you do, everything will be in the show notes. Her food is absolutely incredible. So make sure to check into that. She's been doing this since about 2019, and probably one of the most, I'm going to say, happy people I know. Like I said, her smile lights up the room. If you're not watching this on YouTube, check it out or check it out somewhere. Rate, review, share, all that good stuff. Thanks so much for being on here today, Renata.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm so honored to be on.
So exciting. Tell us a little bit about, what got you into intuitive and nutrition coaching, and what do you love about it?
Yeah, well, actually, it all started really after I had my first kid, Olivia, who is now 9. But when she was an infant, she actually suffered from a lot of gastrointestinal issues. And as a first-time mother, you're worried about literally everything. And so I just knew inside like something is wrong. And we went to our pediatrician, who was incredible. And he explained to me, since I was breastfeeding her, it's possible that there was something that I was eating that she was actually allergic or intolerant to, which I didn't know that that could even be an issue. But he said, we have two options. One, we can do blood tests and then send them away, wait for a couple of weeks for them to get back to tell us what she's allergic to. Or you can just start taking some of the most common allergens out of your diet and see how she responds. And little did I know that one of the most common allergens was dairy. And so I thought, well, let's do basically the elimination method. I'll take dairy out of my diet and let's see what happens. And it completely shocked me because I took it out and I kid you not, like 24 hours later, she was fine. She was sleeping really well. She didn't have the GI issues. And then what I didn't realize was the impact that would have on me, not just as the mother of a kid that was having, GI problems, but I realized that I started to feel less bloated. I didn't have the stomach issues that I had been carrying around for years, thinking that that was quote unquote normal. And so that really got me diving down into this idea of nutrition and how food affects our bodies, even in ways that we don't understand. And so from there, I started making lots of different recipes because my husband was having some different health issues too, was able to help him with that, lowering his cholesterol, improving his gastrointestinal issues as well. And I was like, oh my gosh, like these recipes taste really good, but they're not hard to make. And literally, if my husband and my kids eat it, it's going to be good, right?
It's true. Yeah.
So I started my blog, which is Nourish with Renata, and that has tons of recipes. And then I really got started into like helping people with their nutrition because during COVID, so many women came to me saying, I have been the mom, the chef, the homeschool teacher, the cleaner. I've been worried about everybody else except for me. And as a result, my health has suffered. I'm so stressed out. I don't even know where to start when it comes to looking after me. And so that's when I really delved deeper into helping specifically women with looking at food as the ultimate form of self-care. It's how we nourish our temples, our physical temples. It's how we then make sure that not only are our guts healthy, but our brain is healthy because of that connection from our gut to our brains. It's how we help ourselves manage our mental and emotional stress. So that's really how I got into doing it. And it just has become that thing that I know I was put on this earth to help women with, because there's so many outside influences that tell us you're not skinny enough, you're too skinny, you're too muscular, you're not muscly enough, why aren't you smaller? All these things. And instead of doing that, let's stop trying to live up to somebody else's expectation of what our body should be like. And let's start embracing who we really are and define and decide our own nutritional path forward.
Wow, that's so good. Um, I love it. And like you said, the food does look amazing. So that's pretty cool. What do you see as a number one challenge for people to be able to eat healthy or follow some of this stuff? Because I think sometimes we know what we're supposed to do, or we know that this might help, and yet we don't necessarily do it in lots of different areas, but let's just stay with food. What do you find as being the biggest challenge for people to follow some of the plans?
I think that the most challenging thing for people is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Hmm.
So we have, done so many different habits, whether they be good or bad, for years. And sometimes it can be really scary and fearful to step out of that habit zone and into the zone where we are literally uncomfortable. And that could be something as simple as not getting pizza with your friends at lunch, or it
I
could
don't
be
want
something as
pizza.
simple as, yeah, we're not demonizing pizza, but just basically saying that who we surround ourselves with can have a huge impact on how we behave, right? Like you are the sum of the five people you hang around with the most. And that is true with food. So if you're trying to change and be a healthier eater, is it going to serve you if you're going out with the same people that want to get hot dogs and fries every single day for lunch? Probably not. But it's uncomfortable to stand out. It's uncomfortable to be that different person. And I totally understand that. But the thing that I would love everyone to start understanding is we grow in that zone of uncomfortability. That's how we get better. That's how we learn. That's how we, get to the next level of greatness, whatever that means to you. And so one of the things I really encourage all my clients to do, and I've done this myself, is to literally do something every day that scares you, because then you'll see that it's actually not that bad. We just make it feel like and seem like in our minds that it's something that is insurmountable, but really we can do it. And if we show ourselves that we can do it on a regular basis, it's not that scary anymore.
Wow, you went into some really deep areas there really fast, which is exciting. You talked about the 5 associations that we're around and being uncomfortable, which really applies to a lot of different areas. So, and we've unpacked this in a few other episodes, but if this is your first one you're listening to, associations, before I was like, well, how do I cut out my associations? They're my family, they're my good friends, they've been there forever. What are some ideas that maybe you encountered? Like, it sounds like you kind of have some experience possibly in this, where you started to change your guys' diet. And how did you guys go through that as a family, even to be able to start to change that? And what did you encounter as far as, associations, opposition, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is really understanding your why. And just like you said, many of the principles that I talk about are ones that we've probably heard many times when it comes to like the personal development realm, but I think it applies so wholeheartedly to nutrition too. So, coming back to your why, perhaps you've been through a chronic health scare, right? And that is your why. You want to feel better. You want to have the energy to be able to look after your kids. You don't want to have to feel tired when you have to look after them. Maybe that's your why. Maybe your why is you don't want to feel in pain any longer. What is your why? That is basically the point. When you are so deeply connected to your why of wanting to become healthier, have a better life in terms of your health and wellness, then that is what you go back to every single time you're faced with adversity. It's asking yourself, why am I doing this? And having that at the forefront of your mind and using that as your motivation, using that as what propels you forward, as opposed to only seeing the boundaries that could be in place. So that would be my first tip. And the second one is to make sure you look at life and as well as nutrition in terms of moderation. Like for instance, I have 3 kids. They know what candy is. It's not like I, hold them back from having candy and things like that. It's a normal part of life. But also what I'm trying to teach them and what I try to teach my clients is how do we live a life in moderation, knowing that at times, yes, it's okay to eat a candy bar. It's okay to have ice cream. But at other times, I'm going to come back to my why and to really feel into the moment and think, okay, is this really what's going to serve me most of the time, right? So it's kind of like this 80-20 rule. If we're eating cleanly, if we're eating in a way that helps us to feel energized and have that vitality for life that we've been looking for, then 20% of the time it's totally great to have those celebrations, those indulgences, those other things that you might not have frequently. And that's amazing. It's all about moderation.
That's so good. Do you have an experience or a story that comes to mind where this was the challenge that as you started to really transition, I'm sure, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been 3+ years. So I'm guessing now you're pretty consistent and it's not so hard for you. But when you started to transition from whatever normal eating, I guess I could say, to healthy eating, quote unquote, were there some times that you remember that there was moments that were tough and how you got through them?
Yeah, well, I definitely remember when I was still working in corporate, one of the things that we would always do would we would all as a team go out for lunch, right? And so I live in Houston, which is like the the hot spot for lots of different indulgent foods. And so there would be tons of things that you could go to eat at different restaurants surrounding our office. But not only was it obviously a monetary expense to have to go out every single lunch, it took up a lot of time, but also at a certain point, I just realized this is not serving me. I'm eating way too much. It's not food that helps me to feel good. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my eyes would become droopy. I'd get so sleepy. And so I decided that I'm just going to bring my lunch from now on. And that was very uncomfortable because everyone's like, oh, you're bringing your lunch? Oh, so you're not going to go out with us? Like, that's weird. Why would you do that? And so that was really a moment that I had to draw a line in the sand and think, okay, like, yes, I love to hang out with my coworkers. They're great people, but also I have to try to stick with what makes the most sense for me and for my body. And then, of course, what I thought was super interesting was that other people started to bring their lunch too. And so it became like a little group, and we would all have lunch together in the building with our own homemade foods. And so not only was it better for our bodies, but it was better for our wallets.
And you started a trend by
Yeah.
being that initial leader and taking that I can't imagine that would be very uncomfortable. Um,
Yeah.
to be the only one at the beginning, like basically in the office, like bye-bye, and I'm gonna eat here by myself, my little brown bag lunch.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing, and to be able to do that. But you started a culture. So in some of our moments of fear, knowing that when we do step out into that uncomfortable realm, we can start to help enable others to step out so they can become the best version of themselves at the same time too.
So
That's
true.
really cool. Yeah. And what about with your family? Your husband, especially, I guess kids kind of follow, even though I know lots of kids that don't. So how did that affect, in your family? How did that kind of go, bringing that in as the new way of what we're eating and what we're doing and that kind of stuff?
Right. Yeah. This is such a great question because I find that a lot of women have this issue. Like they are the ones that want their family to be healthier. And it can be a little bit easier with kids, but it can be really challenging with your partner because once again, we're so used to different habits. We're so used to eating how we've been eating for the last, decades. And so definitely with my husband, it is kind of like ebbing and flowing with time. And what I've learned is, like with most people, we don't change unless we're either inspired or out of desperation. And so with some people, they have to hit that rock bottom. So as much as you want to help them, whether you are married to them, friends with them, they're part of your family, sometimes as much as you want to help them, it's just not enough for them to feel that pain first. And sometimes pain can be a fantastic motivator. And so I would say, for anybody that it can have issues with their partner or spouse or friend, then that they want to be healthier, but they're not helping themselves, give them time, be that leader, be the person to show them how it's possible. And they will eventually be inspired to follow suit or to find their own path, which is great. With the kids, I think is super interesting because so here in Texas, they do have school lunches. And so they're kind of like hot lunches at school. They've gotten a lot better, but there's still many days where it is like fried chicken nuggets and fries. And they often have fruit and salad, which is fantastic. But I choose to pack my kids' lunches. And what I think is so interesting is I've literally had my kids' teachers say, oh my gosh, they bring the best lunches to school. They're so colorful. They look so healthy and good for them. And my kids eat all of their lunches. Like they love it, which is fantastic. And yes, there are times when they ask, like, hey, can we have a school lunch? And I think part of it is educating them, whether they be your kids or people in your family. So my kids have heard me talk about nutrition literally so much. They could come on here right now and do a live on making a smoothie and know every single ingredient and why it's important. But it's so important to learn it because we don't often learn about nutrition at school to the depth that helps us in our later lives. And so I'm glad that they get to learn about why we choose to pick, a homemade lunch, what's good about it. Can you have indulgences at times? Absolutely. But understanding the educational piece for nutrition will help them as they move into the later grades as well.
Oh, that's so good. And now kind of switching gears a little bit, you transitioned from a corporate job, which I imagine was a pretty good job, into building your own business. Tell us a little bit about that transition and how you worked through some of the fear factors, I guess, of doing that transition.
Yeah, I feel like that should be just the name of this episode, the fear factor.
I can call it that.
Well, yeah, so I actually went to university to be a chemical engineer.
Wow.
And then I went into the oil and gas industry for like 12 years. So I was with a large corporation, worked for them for many, many years, and they went through a round of reorganization, which was not unusual, right? But unfortunately, I got into a particular team where I didn't feel that same camaraderie like I had had in my previous teams. And I think that was to my detriment, because when the next round of layoffs happened, who got laid off, right? So I did, which was a really big shock. But what was so funny to me was, because the culture of my team had gone downhill so much, I had literally been coming home to my husband every day and crying and saying, it's just not a good place for me to work. I wish that they would lay me off, those kinds of things. And we had talked about, if they offer you a severance package, let's just take it. Let's try to hold on until they offer you a severance package, because, at that time, we had 3 very young children. And so we were trying to make a good decision for our family, which I think many people can relate to. So, of course, I was called into my manager at the Times office, and that was when he told me I was being laid off. But what was so funny was I had been asking for a sign. I had been asking for a sign to the universe, like, just show me if this is what I'm supposed to do, then tell me. And then I was called into that office and laid off. And I think my manager at the time was so shocked, because my immediate response to what he said was laughter. I just burst out laughing, because in my mind, I was like, I had been asking for a sign, and you could not get a bigger sign than that. Yeah.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for.
Right? I was like, ooh, very, very good at this, like, universe manifestation thing. Maybe need to cool it for a minute. But it was a really hard time, as I'm sure that anybody that's been laid off can attest to. It's really a mixture of emotions, because the process of being laid off really drug out for many months. But I had to work from home for a little bit. So basically, I was told to go home. I had my work computer for a while, and then whenever they needed me to do something, I would do something. But it took months and months for it to be finally completed. So it was like being drug out on a line for so long. But I think what was fascinating was, one, there was a great outpouring of support from different people to be like that ear, to be that shoulder for me if I needed it after I was laid off. But 2, what was really interesting was it showed you who your real friends are, because you would be surprised that, some people that I thought were really good friends of mine never reached out, and still haven't reached out to this day, 3+ years later. But the real people that stood by me, like, they're still my friends to this day. So I think it shows you a lot about people's character, and the people that were only friends with you because they thought they could get something out of it, like a very transactional relationship. But ultimately, what was great was it allowed me to, one, spend a lot more time with my kids. I have twin boys, and at that time they're about 3-ish, 4-ish. So it allowed me to stay home with them and to homeschool them, which was fantastic. And then also to build my business up, because I had started it while I was working corporate, the blog I had mentioned earlier. But I really started to get into it deeper and to start the nutrition coaching side of it. So it allowed me to kind of get my foot in the door, so to speak, for developing my own business and becoming the entrepreneur that I wanted to be.
Wow. And did you have a lot of people that thought being an entrepreneur coming from corporate was a crazy concept?
I actually didn't know anybody else that was an entrepreneur at the time.
Wow.
Like, literally nobody. So I was up late at night till like 1 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out how to build a website, how to put ads on a website. Like, it was all these things, because I didn't know anybody that I could turn to. And it was a very solitary feeling, and that's why I'm so adamant now, because when I see women coming up with their own businesses, I want to be there to support them and encourage them, because I have been where they were and I didn't have anybody to turn to. So that's why I love, like, the groups that we've been in, because it's been all about, hey, how can I help you? And in, like, the most loving and caring way, not just because you think you're going to get something out of it, but because we want to see all of us rise.
Right. Wow. And how did your spouse go through that? Like, as entrepreneurship at all in your background at all, like any family that was, or not really?
Not really. No, I mean, now I think it's really interesting, because my husband, who was working in another corporate position in a different company, has now started his own business. And so I think it's, once again, you got to step up and go into that zone of uncomfortability, and you never know who will be inspired to do the same.
Wow, that's so cool. You're like changing the world, girl. I love it. Helping people eat lunches in their office and starting their own businesses. That's pretty cool. Where do you what do you think helped you be, start to build I know I'm sure you're not where you want to be, obviously, but start to build some degree of success. What do you attribute it to beyond the 1 a.m. wake, nighttime shifts, which I'm sure is part of it? But what do you attribute? Was it reading? You talked about associations a little bit. What were some of your biggest things that you feel or felt have helped you get to where you're at still in business 3 years later?
Yeah, I think that what's really interesting is that I was having this discussion last week about how the face of marketing and entrepreneurship has really changed. I think that sometimes people consider entrepreneurs, especially when it comes to sales, as being really quote unquote salesy. Like you have to like be that sleazy used car salesman type. But
Mhm.
honestly, I think that it has shifted so much. And now it's all about having real, authentic, organic relationships with people. And I think that's what's helped me the most because I mean, you know me, I'm not exactly the kind of person that's like, hey, I got a great deal for you. Like, let me let me
Right,
throw in
not at all.
like a potted plant so that you'll be enticed to do it. I'm just not that person. But if I can speak to you and help you to be like if I can be of high service and high impact for you,
Mhm.
I know that I'm living my mission, right? And I think that when we develop these beautiful, authentic relationships with people, it creates this really safe space for us to be ourselves and to feel heard and to be able to listen without expectation. So for me, I really honestly believe that when you can develop amazing relationships with, like for me specifically, with other amazing female entrepreneurs, the sky is the limit because they're the ones that have their ear to the ground for you and be like, oh my gosh, somebody asked, like this happened to me 2 days ago. Somebody asked in a Facebook group for someone to like come in and speak about intuitive eating, and I thought of you immediately. You need to tell them about yourself. And of course I did it, but they're the ones listening. They're your ears, they're your eyes. They're those people that are rooting for you, even when you can't feel like you can root for yourself. So having those relationships is the most important thing to me, not just because of business, but because it is who I am and it's how I show my care and empathy to others as well.
That's such a gold concept. If you're a new entrepreneur, you're listening in, or you want to be, or whatever, one of the things that I do see a mistake that a lot of new people think is they have to sell. So they're like you get the messages on whatever platform you're on right away. Hey, check out my whatever it is, as opposed to just being genuine and connecting with people and building genuine, real relationships with preferably with people that maybe know more people that can start to get the word out like you said. So being conscious of who you're talking to for sure is really important too. So that's really impactful. If you could kind of sum up your where you want to go, where do you see your vision with this?
Well, my vision is to be able to speak on more global stages about nutrition. I really feel like there is this, I'm going to use the word awakening when it comes to how we eat. I think that in the past, we have been very strict about, like, no, I'm paleo. No, I'm vegan. No, I'm carnivore. Like, it's been very defined lines when it comes to how we
Mhm.
eat. And the reason why I lean into the intuitive side is because I am a firm believer that we're all unique individual beings, right? So we
Mhm.
all need food that's a little bit different. Like we can't just, plug in the same kind of nutrition and then expect the same results. It's all about finding what works for you. And so I think that lots of women are coming to this realization that having a really restrictive, having a really deprivatory type diet is not working for them. It's not good for their bodies and it's not good for their emotional and mental well-being too. So for me, it's all about how can I guide you so that you listen to your inner wisdom, to your body's cues, and understand these are the foods that really serve me, and lean into them for that 80% of the time. So that is really what I think is what I need to keep sharing about, because I do believe that when we understand that, we don't feel this like crippling, like shackle type feeling when it comes to how we eat, because I think that so many women do. It's like, no, I can only eat like this, just these four ingredients, you know?
Mhm.
There's really a whole world out there when it comes to how we eat and how we listen to what our bodies are telling us so that we can feel fueled up and energized. So that is really what I imagine myself doing. Of course, I have a cookbook now, but I'm also in the process of writing another book,
Oh,
and
cool.
just being able to coach more women on nutrition and using their intuition to guide them as well.
That's very awesome. Tell us a little bit about the book you're writing.
So you are actually the first person other than my book editor that I have told about this.
Ooh, this is big.
So this is like the ultimate sneak peek.
This is
Um,
cool. I'm excited.
yeah. So recently, I actually went through a little bit of a health issue. About a month ago or so, I was actually diagnosed with shingles. And I don't know if you've heard of shingles before. Have you? Yep.
I have, yes.
Yeah. And so of course it was like very painful. For anyone that doesn't know, it is you usually get a rash on some area of your body that is very painful, itchy. Sometimes you have burning or needle sensations. And so when this rash popped up, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? I don't understand. And the doctor took one look at it and he said, I think it's shingles. And I am a healthy person. I'm not overweight. I
Mm.
eat well, obviously, but I could not understand why this was happening. And so he was like, you got to really look at your stress levels.
Mm.
So I thought to myself, well, I'm doing daily self-care. I do meditation. I do journaling, breath work, all these things. Like, aren't I stress-free? But the truth was, we often don't understand how much pressure we put on ourselves. And we don't realize that it piles up and it compounds every single day. So
Mm.
for me, it was understanding the impact that stress has on me and going about the process of healing my body from the inside out, not just from a nutrition standpoint, but also from a stress and holistic methodology standpoint too. So my book is about my intuitive healing journey of, once again, like, how does nutrition help me heal, but also what are the other factors that can help me to heal, such as reducing stress, getting more sleep, making sure I have good energy in my life, not just from the food that we eat, but from the people around us, our environment, that kind of thing too. So it's really a deep dive into my health journey over, like, really the last few months, and understanding the impact that not just food, but the whole way that we live has on our well-being.
Wow, that's going to be really good. And yeah, for a lot of us, that's a big problem we have, I think. So, we
Yeah.
think we're not stressed. I was talking to my mom. I says, my hair's falling out. I says, what's happening with my hair? And like, we were talking about it. And I think probably there is a stress level that's causing some of that. There's some other stuff possibly too, nutrition, whatever. But the stress is like, yeah, it's big.
It's a
So
huge one. It's huge. It affects everything that happens in our bodies. Obviously, our stress hormone, cortisol, is peaked. If we aren't sleeping enough, our cortisol levels don't go down. Our short-term memory doesn't go back to long-term memory. It affects our gut bacteria balance. I mean, there's so many things that stress does to us that we might not even realize.
wow, yeah, that's gonna be a really good book. Because yeah, like I said, I know that's a big thing, especially when people are entrepreneurs. Then we're what's the word? Building up the hustle, the grind, the 1 a.m.s, to wake up at 4, the like go as hard as you can. How far can you run without sleep? Like all of that is our culture when it comes to entrepreneurship, especially, or success or whatever. Like, you're not working hard enough. You need to work harder. Like, that's our culture. And bringing that in, I know that's something I'm working on. And obviously now you're working on it at the same time. And our body shuts down whenever things happen, like my MS, like your shingles. That kind of is like an awakening, like, hello, get your act together
Yeah.
at some point. And hopefully some of those things wake us up, and hopefully people can sometimes get that before they have something health wise come in their life, that kind of like a hello moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in wrapping up, we could go on forever because I know that people are getting a lot of value from this, because there's so many things that we're going into, not just, healthy eating, but like everything. But I have 3 final questions. And then if there's anything you want to leave the listeners with. So first final question, we talked about this a little bit. If you have someone looking for their purpose, a lot of people talk about their purpose. And I feel like most of the people I have on the podcast obviously have kind of found their purpose. That's why they're doing what they're doing. So if you have someone listening in that's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find that?
Lean into your passion to find your purpose.
That's a good one. Figure out your passion, lean into it. Number two, and there might be more than one, what's your favorite quote and why? At least at
Oh
this moment.
man, that's so hard.
I know there's so many good quotes. What's one that pops out right now that and why?
Ooh, okay. This is so okay. I have one written here. I literally take pictures of quotes all the time because I love them so much.
Me too. So good.
But the one today that I heard that I thought was so perfect was the hardest thing to do is to keep going. It's easy to have a day where you feel like you worked really hard, but nothing came of it, and to just give up. That's the easy thing. But the hardest thing to do is say to yourself, I'm going to work even harder today, and to keep going.
That's good. And that just, yeah. And number three is what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
I think that the easiest one would be loving.
Well, you definitely are that.
Did it. Yes.
What are some final thoughts, or is there any final thoughts that you would like our listeners to kind of be left with?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is when it comes to your nutrition, like I had mentioned before, your greatest healing tool is your intuition. It is that inner wisdom that speaks inside of you that tells you, yes, this is right for me. No, it isn't. And often we listen to that intuition when it comes to making decisions. Like usually it's big life decisions. Like, should I move to this place? Or, this person doesn't seem quite right when I meet them. Maybe I shouldn't trust them. But you can use that same intuition for your nutrition and use it to guide you on different food choices. And I know that sounds so like out of the realm of tangible possibility for many people, but I kid you not, it's true. Literally, I started a few weeks ago on what I'm calling my intuitive gut healing journey. So after I took the medication for shingles, it really messed with my stomach. I had horrible bloating. I had like lots of diarrhea, which was just awful. It's none of the things that you want, right? So I knew that my gut health had been seriously impacted from taking this medication, but I needed to take it, right, in order to get better. Now, the thing was that I decided I'm going to heal my gut by removing inflammatory foods and adding in more of the foods that help to promote the good gut bacteria. And in a week, like I kid you not, I had the most amazing results from just doing 1 week where I was very in tune with what my body needed, my hunger levels, what I needed for sleep, reducing stress, et cetera, because it all impacts our health, right? So in 1 week, I went down 3 pounds. I think I went down 2 inches across my hips, one across my waist. I think it was 2 inches across my chest. I mean, these are crazy numbers, but I wanted to say that as not a comparison for people, but as this inspiration that food has a huge impact on our physicality, of course, right? Those kinds of results may not necessarily be exactly what happens for you, but it's possible to impact your health in such a huge way by simply choosing different foods, right? And so when we do that, then we see not only does our physicality change, but you have more energy. Like I had so much more energy. I felt so much better. My mood had improved as well. Like these are all great things that happen when we choose different foods. And for me, primarily, when I lean into what my intuition is telling me that I need for my body to be able to heal.
Is there, and maybe this is totally, is there like one food that you think is really important for people to eat as a whole that they're not eating? Actual
Yes.
specific food?
I would say dark leafy greens. So I know that lots of people are like, you got to get protein because, it's a building block of all your cells. Yes, protein 100% important, but I think most people understand that. For the most underrated vegetable are dark leafy greens. The reason is one, they are so chock full of nutrients, which is fantastic for you, fiber as well. But for many people, what they don't realize is these dark leafy greens have a compound in it that helps to turn on a specific hunger hormone that tells our body that we're feeling full. So if you've ever eaten a bag full of chips like I have, and then you're like, well, why don't I feel full? Because that hunger hormone has not turned on to say, hey, I'm feeling full. And we get that from dark leafy greens. So it's this amazing combination of helping to activate a hormone, but also giving us all of those micronutrients that our body really does need.
So that would be like spinach.
spinach, kale, bok choy, broccoli rabe, and really, when you look in the grocery store, it can be things like Swiss chard. It can also be cabbage. Any of like the really thicker leaves as well are really fantastic for the additional fiber.
Okay, well, that's awesome. That's a very tangible tip and one that I need to implement. So I appreciate that. Guys, make sure we're going to have everything in the show notes. Make sure to check out Renata's cookbook. I guess her new book's coming out eventually here too, which is exciting. Check out her blog, reach out to her for coaching, that kind of thing. Definitely chat with her and definitely follow her on Instagram because she posts a lot of stuff there too, which is pretty cool. And really, really appreciate it. Rate, review, subscribe, and let's go out there and change one life today. And if every one of us starts to change one life at a time, we will start to change the world. Thank you so much for being on here, Renata.
Thank you.